Welcome to the Life Sucks Cookbook. I'm Linda, fading comedy legend. Oh, I keep saying that. I'm not a comedy legend. So let's just say I'm fading. I'm Linda, I'm fading. Thanks for stopping by and seeing what we're cooking here today on the Life Sucks Cookbook. And you may be asking, what is the Life Sucks Cookbook? There can be suckitude in life. And most of us like to eat something, if you're anything like me, and I hope you're not, because then there's some oozing going on. But even if you have some oozing, then you can make something tasty to make yourself feel better. So that's what we're going to do today. And I'm going to tell you a little story as well. You know, when I first started these, I thought, well, mostly I have to kind of dig into my past to find bummered things to talk about, as we all have. But since the US election, I just feel like there is sort of this blanket of suckiness that's fallen over everything. I don't have to go too far to find things to talk about. So that's what I'm kind of focusing on today because, you know, watching the appointments that are apparently trying to be made, and specifically one, RFK Jr. I mean, hilarious? Is it hilarious? It's pretty hilarious because here's a man who's had part of his brain eaten away by a worm. Which reminds me, if you're of an age like me, and when I say of an age, I mean, 35. Years and years and years ago, when I was very, very young, there was a show called Night Gallery. It was Rod Serling. Rod Serling originally did The Twilight Zone, but then in the 70s, he came back with a series called The Night Gallery, and it was very similar to The Twilight Zone, only it was in color. And there was one story, though, I mean, I don't remember too many of them, but I remember this one in particular, where this man had been away on, I don't know, maybe some exotic holiday, and he comes back and he starts going through incredible pain, and they think he's going to die, and it's like in his head, there's pain in his head. He's stuck in bed, and finally they realize it's a worm. It's something that's chewing its way, chomping through his brain. And of course, like I say, they think he's going to die, but lo and behold, one day it crawls out his other ear. It went in one side, crawled out the other. Oh my God, it's a happy ending. And then the doctor comes and says, the good news was the worm had crawled out the other end. The bad news, it had laid eggs. And that was the end. Went to black. He's screaming. I think he jumps out the window because he wasn't going to go through that again. And I'm not so sure that we can be certain that that worm in RFK's brain didn't leave some eggs there. And you just never know when these things are going to hatch. It could be like the 17-year cicadas. It could be just sitting there. If he gets confirmed, suddenly all the eggs hatch. So that's why today we're making a pumpkin chocolate loaf. I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to lie to you, I've been kind of on a different sort of diet, so it's a keto pumpkin chocolate chunk loaf, but it's really good. I really like it, and the recipe will be linked on the YouTube, linked in the, what is it, Adam? In the description. That's where it's going to be linked. And then you'll go to my website. I'll give you the recipe, and it's I'll tell you who made this. I mean, I didn't make it up. I got it from somebody else, and she's really good, and I'll tell you who she was. It's almond flour. I've got the dry stuff again in the bowl here ready to go. The sweetener of your choice. I'm using a sugar substitute, and baking powder, salt, and pumpkin pie spice. That's the key ingredient. And then essentially, we just dump everything else in. There's 3 eggs. This is really easy. Pumpkin puree. So get all that in there. It gets thrown together really quickly, which is, I like that. So you just mix all of that up till it's nice and moist. All the eggs and the pumpkin gets spread around. And then you just throw as many chocolate chunks or chocolate chips. You can get stevia sweetened chocolate chips, which I really like. That's not what these are. I'm going to put more in. And then you toss it in a pan, smooth it out. And I've put it in parchment paper because I've buttered the pan or greased the pan before, and because it's almond flour and eggs, and it really sticks to the pan. 325, stick it in for an hour, and then we got something good to eat. Okay, the loaf is baking, as I like to say. So, RFK Jr., here's the thing. I am worried about his wife. You probably know Cheryl Hines from Curb Your Enthusiasm. I assume she's a lovely person. But, I mean, I think she's had to deal with a lot. First of all, maybe she's had to eat a lot of roadkill. How much of that can a person put up with? And I know there's a group that goes out looking for roadkill because if it's fresh, I get it, but still, come on. And I don't know, who knows where that worm came from? You know, I mean, he already said the story about that bear, he was going to skin it and eat the meat. And then the whale? What did they do with the whale head? With whale fluid flowing into the car as they drove it home? I mean, this is a lot. And also, I think he's done some pretty nefarious things. With his first wife, he had a lot of affairs and made a list, kept a diary. So I want to talk to Cheryl, just between us. Girl, if you haven't already done so, you got to get out. You don't have to put up with this. You should have fresh meat. You should not have a chest freezer somewhere in your house with who knows what kind of roadkill. Maybe you stayed longer because perhaps it's that sexy sort of Katharine Hepburn nails going down a chalkboard voice of his. It could be you feel embarrassed, but I want to assure you, you shouldn't feel embarrassed walking away from this. The time to feel embarrassed is when you've been dumped by the Armadillo Man. A long, long time ago, when I was working in a radio station, I was sweet-talked by this plain-talking Texan that blew into town with a bunch of armadillos. Because his thing was he raced these armadillos at the halftime of the football game. I end up going to this football game. He gives me a free ticket to go, well, 2 tickets to go to this football game. I took my dad, which was a mistake. Then I was going to go down at halftime and wrangle these armadillos with him out on the field. Now, here's the thing about armadillos. They stink. They're cute little critters, but if you're around them for any length of time, you're constantly saying to yourself, oh my God, what died? Because that's what it smells like. There I was on the field running after these crazy Dasipodidae. That's their Latin name. I thought this Texan guy was kind of sweet on me. And so after the game was over, I went to his hotel room, maybe hang out and have a drink, whatever. And I wasn't there for very long when somebody knocked at the door, and it was one of the cheerleaders from the football team. I was out of that room faster than you can say anteater relative. I was no cheerleader. I didn't even get a chance to say goodbye to my favorite armadillo pal, Jerry. We had become very close very fast, despite the smell. That's embarrassing. Why did I do that? I think you know how attractive a man with a dozen armadillos can be. The one thing I will say in comparison to RFK Jr. is that at least the armadillos were alive. So come on, Cheryl. I'm with you, girl, please. Look at me and say, look, if she, well, I was dumped. It's a different thing. You got to walk away, but but you can do it. You can do it. Get out of that insanity. The brain, the worm, the eggs, who knows what can happen. Maybe the second thing you need to do is get a rabies shot. I don't know if you can catch rabies from roadkill meat. Do you believe in shots? Have you been indoctrinated with all? I don't know. Okay, we'll get this loaf out. Our loaf is baked. This doesn't look terribly pretty, but it tastes good. What I find with these almond flour recipes, or specifically this one, they kind of break apart. I used the parchment paper this time, but it's still looking to me like when I move it, it's gonna you gotta kind of be careful with it. As I always say, in the end, it goes in your mouth, it gets broken up, and it tastes awfully good. So the recipe will be linked in the description. To wrap it up, Cheryl, eat something good, pack up the car, hit the road, forget the roadkill, hightail it. And I'll see you next time on the Life Sucks Cookbook. Let's do this again. My loaf here looks a little like roadkill.